And we are back. Hopefully, it's going to be better. And I want to have your feedback because if it is not better, then I'll have to investigate what's wrong. Hopefully, it's going to be better. So, this is with a different machine than I'm using usually. We'll see if it's the computer or if it's something else. So, welcome again. Welcome back. And hope that you are going to enjoy the show tonight. So, for all of those that I haven't mentioned yet, say hi. I'm going to, of course, continue saying hello to everybody. Welcome aboard. This is the Shortwave Radio Show, take two, with the other machine running Windows 10. If anything, it can be okay that there could be a temporary fuzz, but not every 10 minutes. So if it's better like this, we're going to keep it with that machine. Maybe I should dedicate that machine. The other one is an experimental machine, so maybe some of the things that I do with it is actually creating a problem. Where this one is a Windows 10 standard machine that I use to make videos, but pretty much only that. So maybe I could dedicate that machine for streaming. It's going to work fine. So welcome back, everybody, and hope that you're going to have fun tonight. Okay, so as we were talking about radio and shortwave radio in general, we have a lot of questions, and we're going to be checking that out for sure. Tonight, newbie questions of all sorts, and it's kind of great questions, honestly, because people are afraid to ask questions often because they find that maybe I shouldn't ask that. I should know that, or why am I the only one that seems to be actually asking that question? Well, you know what? The reason why you're the only one asking that question sometimes is because you're the only one that has the guts to do so. I've learned in life one thing is that when you ask a question, a lot of people ask or actually want to ask the same question, but a lot of people are too shy to do so. So that's why, it's great to have the questions we're going to have tonight to go through. So hope that everything is going to be all right and better with this new stream. VA3JPX, nice to have you on board. James Poulet on Facebook. Yes, as we were talking earlier, a lot of people on Facebook and here are kind of two different people. They're two different person, so we can't always match the Facebook user and the user that's here in the chat room. So Daniela, nice to have you here, and pretty cool to have you on board, my friend. What else do we have? Timothy from Fort Smith, Arkansas. Johnny the Xer, nice to have you here. Canadian Radio TV guy from Sherwood Park, Alberta, -19, feels like -28. Blind Picker, nice to have you here. Rob, W0RAB. What else do we have? Yeah, well, I posted a link, so hopefully everybody's going to find a way the new stream. So that means that if it stays good and if it stays great, it's the machine that I was using that something's different. But you know what? I shouldn't be honestly. I shouldn't be using the other machine. The one I was using all the time is an insider machine. It's running an experimental Windows 11 on it. So anything can happen when that happens. So it could be because of that, and I should actually run it on a standard computer. But I haven't had for months. Didn't have any problems, so I thought, but it's okay. Okay, so everybody seems to be happy with the new video, and so it's all right. Yeah, I'm always using Wi-Fi, and it never is a problem here. I've got a really big gun router here, so Wi-Fi is never a problem, even for live stuff with video. I'm always connected via Wi-Fi for the video stuff. It's really the machine that's a problem more than the Wi-Fi stuff, because I know Wi-Fi could be problematic at some point. But the router I have here, which is a very high end router, is a really good and tough one with really fast output. And I'm connected on 5 gigahertz also with very fast speeds. So it works pretty well in general. So cool to have everybody here. Cool to see that everybody's happy that the video is better. Michael Hayward, nice to have you here from Maryland. What's the best currently made shortwave radio, regardless of price? You know what? If I would spend money to buy one single radio, um, right now, I'd just get a Texan H501X. It's what is the best in features, performance, and sound quality for price. Nice big radio, performs great. Yeah, my wall's on fire, so if I'm not here by the end of the stream, you'll know why. And absolutely, David Zidman, no stupid questions. There are no stupid questions. You know, we all start from basics. We all were there when we had no idea what we were doing. You know, I was really yeah, that's a firewall. That's a good one. That's a firewall. um we all are you know started somewhere with absolutely zero knowledge. I was talking when I was showing QSL cards about how, you know, I thought my antenna was broken because I couldn't hear KBS World Radio 2 days after I heard it first time. And you know, I mean, it's just a wire outdoors. I had no idea about solar activity or anything. So, you know, it shows you we all start somewhere. And it is, you know, kind of interesting. Charlie McKee, yeah. Well, we do it often, but yeah, absolutely. With you know, maybe we could dedicate a live show to tuning around and maybe even explaining, you know, the way that I tune, for example, and stuff like that. That could be an interesting show. So pretty cool. Curtis, nice to have you here from a windy Vacaville and Sacramento areas. So the weather here is we're at like 40 Fahrenheit, and it's worse. The snow's coming. Half a foot of snow's coming. So everybody's happy with the video. So it seems that I'm gonna maybe stick with that machine from now on to do the stream. Seems much better. So yep, I'm gonna have an end fed antenna. The guy's sending me everything. I mean, guy is, you know, is sending me the antenna. I said, well, I'll get some coax and everything. So no, no, no. The box that I'm sending you in has everything: the end fed, the balun, and the coax for your FT450. You have nothing to do except just set it up outdoors, and that's it. So that's going to be interesting to see. Metal Uner, looking forward to the snow. Well, I love snow. I don't mind, you know, but I don't have a car. So, you know, not having a car to shovel is probably not bad. I do have to shovel around the building here because that's part of my contract here. But apart from that, yeah, it's okay. So, Daniel, nice to have you here. Says uses an end fed with a homemade 9.1, works great. And Andy New, did you hook up with Larry K7HN? I need, you know what? I completely forget. You know, I'm one of those dumb people that look at an email and then do other things and forget. I really need to do it. I'm going to do it after the show tonight. Thanks for reminding me, man. I'm about to forget that. Man, too much things to do here. Skip, nice to have you here. And to EI from New Jersey. Johnny DXer, nice to have you here from Southeast Pennsylvania. Nice to have you on board, guys. And what else do we have? What else do we have? So it's okay for now. So you know what? We have Frederick. I'm gonna let the chat room go through a little bit more. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna answer some of the questions coming to us from Frederic, that is in France, and this is gonna be interesting and nice to see. So here we are. Here we are again. Pretty cool. Works fine, says Richard Lemke. Cool. I think it's going to be fine with this machine. I think the problem was the machine. I noticed something this afternoon that had actually made me think that it could be the computer. When I was doing something this afternoon, I saw that there were moments where it seemed to have temporary slowdowns that lasted like a few seconds, and then it would come back to normal. So maybe it's having a hit on the video output. So the other machine is going to be better, I think. Okay, Randall Claus from Chicago area. Nice to have you here. Nice to have you back, Brad. And we are going. K6YYL from California. Power was down for a day and a half. Still cleaning up. Hope everything's all right. We lost 60-foot tall oak tree. I remember that. It was a very, very destructive windstorm. Man, crazy, eh? Daniela, I'm on my second Thexan H51X. It's a good insensitive performer on AM, but it's wobbly in SSB mode. It's just like the old Sony Shortwave 55. And it's not really in the lower, it is on the 10-meter band, but in general, it is not really that wobbly. It is actually pretty stable for the most part. So, do you see it everywhere? Because I saw it on the 10-meter band, and it's pretty much the only place I see it. Standard, when I listen to SSB on 40 meters or on low frequencies, I don't have the wobbly SSB in it. That is kind of interesting. Okay. BT Radio, Paul, AA1SU in Vermont, bracing for a snowstorm here. So yeah, you guys are gonna have more snow than we do, actually, for sure. Okay. Frederic from France has written in with a lot of questions, and he agreed because I asked him permission, because sometimes people don't feel like they want to be either mentioned or be, that I'll be using a name, or that I'll be doing it in the live show. And he said, no, fine, because I explained to him anyways that his questions were great, and that, it's going to help everybody that is new to the hobby to probably have a little more, maybe first of all, have more faith that they are not alone with not understanding certain things, but also maybe grasp some of the basic knowledge. So Frederic is not watching because he's in France and it's like middle of the night over there at this time, but he says he's going to watch tomorrow the repeat, and he'll be back on Saturday commenting. So hopefully, I don't know if it's in the chat or by email, but we're going to see. So Frederic, first of all, background. Frederic lives near Paris, in the south part of Paris, in a place that is surprisingly quiet. And he says that he is crossing his fingers that it stays like that. He listened to the shortwave bands back in the 70s, and he remembers all the action and what's happening, but he didn't listen very long. He had a radio back in the early 70s, and he says that he listened for about a year, and then life caught on, and he left and didn't do shortwave ever again. By accident, while he was searching for stuff on YouTube, he says, I was looking for electronics videos, and some videos popping up were about radio and electronics. And one video came up, and it was your channel, and you were talking about the basics of shortwave radio, and it kind of turned me on because I understood that maybe shortwave could be a cool hobby again today. So what he did is click on my channel and subscribe and started looking at all the videos. He understands that shortwave is not the same today, and he understands that by watching a lot of my videos. But he was attracted to coming back to the hobby, and he said, "My year of shortwave in the early '70s that I still remember as being something fantastic and an amazing moment in my life." So I thought maybe it's time to join again. He is retired from a job that uh, wait, let me just okay. So he's retired from a electronics job where he was actually putting the electronics in modern cars for a company that actually was having contracts with many other car makers like GM and so on. So he says that electronics was always a passion for him, and he was glad to work with the electronics field. He says, "Boy, cars change from the early days when I started my job in the '80s to today, with cars being controlled by computers now, pretty much." So he says, "I have actually purchased a Texan PL330. It was in my money range and my price range." And he says that he's enjoying this little radio. He finds it amazing that such a small radio performs so well today. And he says that a lot of the videos that I posted helped him actually get more off of this radio. Now, he continues saying, "What I have so little knowledge in radio that there's tons of things I just don't get right. And I'm hoping you can help." So now is the list of questions. And so let me just check the chat room, and we're gonna start with the questions. Um John Doe, nice to have you here. What else do we have? What else do we have? Da, 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 da. Okay. Um, so Daniela, use the radio top of a mountain guest feed during Christmas. Wobbled on all frequencies. Okay. Make sure you were not near a transmitter site or your cell phone not next to the radio. Because be careful with that. It will wobble the receiver. If I leave my cell phone next to the radio, the receiver is unstable. The strong signal coming out of the cell phone interferes with the circuitry. On top of that mountain, make sure there was no transmitters or antennas of any kind. Also, because if there is some strong signals, that might explain the wobble. Because from 160 to 40, there's no wobble at all on my H501. And the only place that I've seen it, and most of the comments I've seen of people that talk about it, is in the 10-meter band. 10-meter band, for some reason, has some kind of warble in it, kind of a trembling. So just make sure that that is not the case. For the rest, interesting. Andy New loves his Xiegu G90. Kevin, nice to have you here from New Jersey. My birthday is tomorrow, and I started feeling bad this morning. Just received word from my medical lab. You got COVID. Oh, man. Take care, my friends. Stay safe. And just you know, just to take care of yourself. I think that's the best advice. It's very important. I'm amazed with the new Omicron variant. I'm amazed at the number of people that are positive. With the first variants, I had nobody in my surrounding or family that actually got sick. And with Omicron, most of my family and a lot of my friends on Facebook actually got it. So stay safe, Kevin. Okay, take care of yourself. That's why you got to get vaccinated, guys. Chris, G7VEO, Scotland. They have storm and trees down the other day, but in the south of the UK, we had a nice sunny day. My jam. Today is my 5-year anniversary of being retired. Well, that's the best. You're taking care of yourself, my friends. What else do we have? Chris Powell, nice to have you here from Minneapolis. Very cold day. Good night. Stay inside warm and watch the stream. Perfect. Samedi, t'es VDXer. Fais attention à toi. So, John Hummel Newell, what direction are you going to run your new antenna, Jill? East, west, north, south? Actually, the way the infrared antenna that I will have is not meant to be outside all the time. It is designed to be a portable antenna. So it's meant to, you put it up, you use it, and you take it down. So I'm going to find a way to do it and have a few directions I can try it and take it back in, because it's not the balun and everything where the connectors are not made to be outside in the weather when it's raining and stuff like that. So I'll be looking at having a permanent antenna outside. So for now, what I'll do is I'll set it up temporarily every time I want to do some, DXing. I can easily do that right now here. And actually, he's given me some ideas because he's been trying different patterns in different ways, and even using it as a vertical because he knows I'm living on the third floor here. So it's all things that he can that can be done. So I'll be playing around with that for sure and checking out different things. So okay. Yeah, but that's the thing, Kimberly. The thing is, you got to understand that having the vaccine, and we're not going to talk more about it, but having the vaccine doesn't stop you from getting it. It stops you from being in the hospital real sick bad, and that's what you got to understand. And that's what too many people don't understand. It is important to be vaccinated, because getting it without a vaccine, that brings you to the hospital. And actually, that's what we see here in Quebec right now. The majority of people in the intensive care are all the unvaccinated. There's not that many vaccinated. It shows that there's a difference. So that's the end of the COVID stuff. Okay, let's go to the. And I want no more comments in the chat room about it, by the way. Okay, let's go here. Okay, so first question, very simple. First question is, what's the difference between single sideband, upper sideband, lower sideband, and AM and all of that? He kind of has a hard time understanding the differences in modes. One of the biggest things here in North America, one of the things that messes up a lot of people is the fact that we called our radio, the standard radios we use, AM, FM, when in reality, we should have called them medium wave VHF because the AM, FM has to do with just the transmission mode. So on shortwave, what we have in general is signals that are AM, which are mainly international broadcasts. So if you listen to BBC, to Radio Romania, to Voice of America, it's an AM signal on the international broadcast bands. The reason AM exists is that it is capable of getting through on radios that are very inexpensive because of its carrier and the way that it's the signal goes to the radio. Just a detector, so technically just a diode almost, can bring up the audio and have you listen. That's why crystal radios work, because an AM signal has all the components, and when you put just a detector and the proper circuit around it to tune, it will be capable of giving you that voice or that music that you want to listen to. And you don't have to have a fancy receiver in AM. That's why AM was the dominant thing. Simple radios, and you get the radio signal, and you're listening to whatever. Um, the other thing also, single sideband is more finicky to tune around. It requires a precision circuit, a precision radio. And you could see that because in the past, when some radios were crappy, like my DX100, listening to single sideband was not a fun experience. There's a lot of drifting, and it was just crazy. And listening to music on single sideband, you guys see it with pirates all the time. Not the best of experience, and it's hard sometimes to fine tune, even with a good radio. It's sometimes hard to fine tune the kind of the zero beat to hear the music properly and so on. So that is why AM was dominant in international broadcasts and in AM radio. Simple radios will get the job done. But single sideband is there because it's much more efficient. And a lot of signals on the shortwave bands need to have efficiency before, you know, uh, easy to tune if you want on a radio. And that is because most of the time when we listen to single sideband, our receivers are of a different kind. They're kind of a little higher end and are capable of receiving the single sideband. You need to get used to it on some radios, especially ones with BFOs. But it's more efficient, and a single sideband signal gets way much farther away for the same power used than an AM signal. And so that's why that the single sideband exists. And so the different modes of transmissions are for single sideband for efficiency, AM because simpler radios can receive a signal basically. That's for sure. Before we continue with the next question, we're just gonna continue with this. What else do we have? Angpar, nice to have you here from Los Angeles. What else do we have? John McClure, nice to have you here. What else do we have? What else do we have? Skip, DSB also popular in QRP community. So that's interesting. Vicky Pelletier, bonsoir. Nice to have you on board. And Louis Giliberto, nice to have you here. Says, wish I was hearing such a good explanation when I started the hobby. Yeah, same here. I mean, honestly, same here. What else do we have? Anthony. Aerial Imaging, nice to have you here. Anthony Friends, nice to have you on board. Aerial Imaging says, do you know if it's possible to use the external medium wave antenna with the PL330 aside from inductive coupling loops, direct input jack? On the PL330, you can use the external antenna, but there's a catch. If you press, I think it's number 5 that turns it on. When you press the key to turn it on, it's not through the antenna jack. It's through the telescopic that it works. So you have to clip your antenna to the telescopic from what I have seen. So maybe tomorrow I'm going to take the time to explain it better. I'm going to actually take my radio, my 3330, and play around with it to kind of make sure that what I'm saying is right. But from what I understand, on the 330, the external antenna for medium wave and long wave works by the hidden features, as they call them. But it's not through the antenna jack; it's through the telescopic. So you'll have to clip on the telescopic. But more on that, you know what? I'll make a video about it tomorrow because I'm going to test it out. Kimberly, out of everything, she prefers a single sideband. AM/FM is fun, but SSB is my favorite. Well, you know, and you'll probably get a lot more DX opportunities over a single sideband for sure. Erica Trell, nice to have you on board. And yes, my wall's on fire. It's called a firewall. Skip CW 20 dB advantage over SSB. Skip is trying to sell us CW and that we're all there. And you know what? I am interested, Skip. I am going to work my way to getting at least a minimum of efficiency in CW and get on the bands, and we'll have a CW contact. Jason Francis, nice to have you here from Ottawa. Aerial Imaging says, that's what I suspected. Thanks, I came to that conclusion as well via some testing. Wanted to settle some confusion. Yeah, so, you know, you don't have to couple, but you'll have to use a telescopic. Yeah, it's a real firewall. Absolutely, Eric. That's the way it works. That is preventing me from getting, you know, the bad guys. Mind Jam, we're getting 2 minutes of sunlight every day now. Yeah, it's getting fast. You know, I mean, we're here. The sun sets now past 5 p.m. It's really cool. Yes, Kimberly, I will have a end-fed wire antenna with a balun with the cables and everything. So it's an antenna that is being sent to me by a fan from upstate New York. The guy's called Mike, and he's sending everything. The antenna is made for 40 to 6 meters. So this is going to be kind of interesting to check out for sure. So, okay, let's continue with the questions. Second question is, you might think so, you know, that's where people feel sometimes they're kind of missing out and they're maybe dumb. And dumb is not a good word here. So he says, you might think I'm dumb, but the first time I heard an international broadcast station, which was Radio Romania, is because you mentioned it. I still have no single idea on how to tune a international broadcast and know when they are on the air. Could you help me find my way? What frequencies and what times? And how do you have that knowledge? Okay. When you get your radio for the first time, what happens is that you've got a spectrum of frequencies around you. Okay. A Texan PL330, you got 30 megahertz there. It's a huge chunk of frequencies. But that chunk of frequencies is not divided, you know, out of luck. It's not, you know, something's here someday, something's there someday. No, there is basically a band plan that divides the spectrum into specific areas where stations are, where ham radio is, where utility stations are. That's the first thing you've got to know, is to know what are the international broadcast bands, because you're talking about that right now. Easiest way, simply either go to Wikipedia and type international broadcast bands shortwave. They're all going to be there. They're going to tell you what the frequency ranges are. And you'll know that in there, that's where stations exist. They're not scattered, you know, all around shortwave. They're in specific areas. Just like amateur radio is not scattered randomly. It's specific areas across the shortwave spectrum that are already divided, already decided. So what you do is, first of all, I think the first thing that any newbie should, just as a basic knowledge. No. Where are the international broadcast bands? Where are the frequency ranges? Write them down on a piece of paper, print them if you have a printer, and keep that close to you. You'll know where stations should be when you listen to international broadcasts, regardless of, because we're not even in propagation here, because that's another aspect of the shortwave hobby is, yeah, there's all of these bands, but when is that one active and that one not active? And it's like, it doesn't matter. Start by at least knowing where they should be and tune around in that range. The knowledge of propagation, honestly, for me, came much more with personal observations while tuning regularly than somebody telling me, oh, well, there's the solar activity and there's this, day night thing and the summer and the winter. It's like, forget about that. Okay. Just forget about that. That you will learn and notice as you listen. Um, Start by just knowing where are the stations. So where are the international broadcast bands? And remember, any list that you see, tune a little below and above because it's not, some stations are out of band. So you can go a little further away. So there are international broadcast bands. Tune them at day, night, evening, morning, anytime. Check which ones are active at different times of night, day, and so on. And you know what? That's going to already help you in finding broadcasts you want to listen to and you're going to hear. The biggest problem of not knowing where a station is first of all, not knowing where they are in the international broadcast bands. The second thing after that is just knowing what time they're broadcasting and where they're broadcasting to. You live in Europe, you're fortunate to have more stations to listen to broadcasting to Europe or towards the general European continent than here in North America. So you'll have stuff to listen to. When I see somebody in Europe telling me, I hear nothing, look, you've got to learn a little more because if you hear nothing in Europe, either you have too much noise or you really, really aren't tuning the right frequency ranges in the right time. So I think the basic knowledge for any shortwave listeners to know where the international broadcast bands are. And like I said, you don't have to learn them. You'll learn them over time, by heart. But write them down on a piece of paper, print them, whatever. And start tuning those ranges and listen carefully to what's in there. That's the first thing. The other thing is you have several online resources of station schedules. That also is a very, very important thing to check out. You live in an era where you are so lucky to have this and internet information. I come from an era where I got schedules of stations that were not on those frequencies anymore when I got the schedules because they've been off for 6 months. Um, and it's not even a joke. It's like in 1982, 83, you had schedules from stations in envelopes. Radio Romania would send you their schedule for next season in advance and things like that. It was crazy. It's like the lists we had were not that accurate, but we had to, go by it. And most of it, honestly, was we were tuning around. And it's like, oh, look at that. Radio Berlin is here. Okay. I'm going to try to remember that. Today, you have the information available at your fingertips. That's why I always say the internet is the best thing that ever happened to shortwave because we have all the information of what is happening. And that is definitely much better than whatever I had to use back in the 80s and part of the 90s also. So, EIBI space.de, there's short-wave.info. There's quite a few websites that have schedules. Um, if you just Google shortwave schedules, you'll have a lot of information on where to get them. If you have a smartphone, if you have a tablet, there's an Android app called Skywave Schedules. There are schedule apps for iOS and iPhones, iPads, and so on. Check what's available in the app stores. Remember one major information: schedules change regularly on shortwave because of all sorts of reasons: propagation, interference, so on. So some stations might actually change their frequencies one or two times just because they notice they're not being heard because of some interference or whatever. Um, that I think is the most basic thing. Know where to listen to international broadcasts, then start looking around at stations' schedules. Let's go down to the chat once again before we continue a little bit more here. What else do we have? So, VT Radio Bluebirds returned to here in Vermont this week. Anybody else? We have some almost even like in January here. It's pretty crazy. Kevin, there's an old timer at my radio club who sends 60 plus words per minute straight key. Wow. That is crazy. My jam. I was telling my friend about shortwave. He sent me a photo of Paul the cat and asked, like this. Oh, man. Daniel, not sure if it's been said. I had to walk away, but sunrise and sunset higher than sunset higher than 10 megahertz will propagate better. After dark, lower than 10 will propagate better. Yep. Yeah, a general rule, but it's not an official rule. It's very tricky. Propagation changes from season to season, and depending on where you're listening to, and it's extremely tricky to have. You can't put a general rule that is fixed on shortwave. You might say 10 and below is better at night, 10 and above is better in the daytime. Yeah, with somewhere in the middle, and so many other things can happen that makes this rule not perfect. Meaning, you should still tune around everywhere, even if it's night or day, because you never know. Kimberly has a bunch of antennas on the roof. Most are vertical, 6 to 60 meters. And I almost forgot the discount antenna they use as well. Watching them bend and bounce back in the windstorm was amazing. That's when you know that you've set them up properly. Here is the same. Here I've got, we had a couple of very strong windstorms. I was looking at my discount, waving, and it's like, oh boy, man, is this going to hold up? It's holding up. Chris G7 VEO. Paul is, I think, with his girlfriend in the bedroom. Who knows what they're doing? Charlie McKee, probably the best tool for a shorter listener. Ham operator or logbook helps one stay on frequency and listen and learn. Yep, that's a good thing for sure. What else do we have? Vicky Pelletier, I have a question. What is the difference between listening to SDR on the web and buying myself an SDR listener? For my part, I don't see much difference. Okay, the difference is, okay, going to a friend's house, listening to shortwave in your home. And you might say, well, I don't understand exactly. Well, when you listen to an online SDR, you're listening to somebody else's radio in some other part of the world. So say that you're listening to the U20 receiver in the Netherlands. So you're listening to shortwave. Yeah, definitely. But you're listening to shortwave via someone else's radio in another region of the world. Having your own SDR means you are listening to shortwave in your home with your antenna. It's not an online thing. An SDR is a radio controlled by a computer. An online SDR is a remote one. Your own SDR is you're listening in your home. It's like having your own radio, your own antenna, and listening from your home to signals you're getting where you live. That's the difference. So the um, the thing about that is all about, do you want to listen to somebody else's radio with their fancy antennas, or would you like to, the fun of receiving a faraway signal by yourself with your radio and your antennas instead? That's where the difference is. So, for example, I like online SDRs. I use them regularly for signals, mostly that I cannot or will never be able to hear here, or to see if a signal is on the air. But I rather have my SDR with a signal here that I'm receiving with my outdoor antenna here, because I know that I'm receiving it at my own location with my equipment. That's the difference. For the rest, an SDR is an SDR. They all work the same. They all do pretty much the same. It's really a question of, I'm using somebody else's equipment at another place, or I am using my own equipment here where I live, and that doesn't require the internet. An SDR, too many people still have the impression a software-defined receiver is a internet-driven radio. It's not. The reason why they think that is probably because of the online SDRs, where they use the internet to stream it from somebody else. A software-defined radio is a radio. It's like having a portable radio in your hand. It's just that it's controlled by a computer, and it does not require the internet at all. You would have no internet. You would still be able, as long as you have the software installed, be able to listen to an SDR play or SPDX or SP1A SDR, and with your own antenna and without any internet. It doesn't use the internet to listen. An SDR has nothing to do with the internet. It's simply, at the most basic form, a radio controlled by a computer. And the reason it's getting popular is because there's a visual aspect. You see the signals. And an example is my computer right here. You see the signals that are on a computer. You see the frequency range. The waterfall is showing you the signals around where you're listening. That's the difference. That is simply the difference. But it's the fun of having your own radio and listening from your own equipment, your own antenna, where you live. It's like having a portable radio, but is the style. Matt, how helpful were places like Radio Shack for carrying books and information about shortwave listening back in the 80s? Not that good, actually. When I got, so, you know what, in the 80s, when you got a radio, the good part of it, like when I got my DX100, the good side of the DX100 manual was that it explained, even though it didn't have a lot of pages, it explains where you're going to listen to what. And that was definitely um, a good thing, because it made me understand where international broadcasters were, where ham radio is, where utility signals are, and so on. But once you've passed that, Radio Shack itself would have probably been a good source if they had understood that having a few shortwave radio books was interesting. They did at some point towards the end, when the Passport to World Band Radio existed. Here, Passport to World Band Radio appeared on the Radio Shack store at some point. But my real radio book experience and help was somewhere else. It was downtown Montreal, where there's a place called Radio Lorenz that had multiple books, a lot of books. And actually, Sheldon Harvey was the guy behind all of that. They had dozens of books about radio of all sorts, from utilities, from broadcast, the passport to World Band Radio, the World Radio TV Handbook, the utility. I remember one of the books I loved, the Confidential Frequency List, that I actually purchased a few times. That was much more helpful. Radio Shack was great to get us into the hobby, lacked in references to help us with the hobby. I guess it wasn't their thing, because Radio Shack was very mainstream in electronics and gadgets. So even though there were shortwave radios was one aspect of what Radio Shack was all about. And I guess, most Radio Shacks weren't that big. And what happened is they had to limit whatever they have in the store to have maximize the inventory of what you can buy as gadgets and stuff. So there were really no books, at least here. I don't know in the US, but here it wasn't. Books weren't that thing here. It was not. That was not Radio Shack here. When they finally did get books, it was in the 90s. They got the Passport, and they got Bill Cheek mod book, and they got another one which was there was a Canadian book. I think it was like Ontario and Quebec. Aritech. I think it was the Aritech book, which was a Canadian frequency list book for VHF, UHF scanner frequencies. That's pretty much what I saw there. And that arrived late in the 90s. Before the 90s, there were no books to really help out in the Radio Shack, for sure. You had to ask the guy that was at the counter, is like, well, what I got to listen on this? Pretty much. What else do we have? Let me just go down quickly. Shelly, nice to have you here from Pennsylvania. Luis Giliberto, +1 for internet being helpful. Speaking of which, sad that the World Radio TV end of 2022 is. It's sad that it goes away, but I'll repeat it all over and over again for shortwave listeners, standard shortwave listeners, is of no help. It's really a broadcaster's reference, much more than a radio geek reference. But, it's sign of the times. Ralph says, back in the 70s, 80s, Radio Shack had 2-3 standard shortwave paperback books on their racks. Well, you see here, there weren't, not at the Radio Shack in Canada. Well, here in Montreal, the Radio Shacks that I went to had 0 books of shortwave or anything. Keith, just heard Ethon is releasing Elite satellites soon. Any thoughts? Too expensive, too late is the first thing that comes to mind. If they sell that thing, because Radio World in Toronto says that thing is going to be $700, I ain't getting that. It's not worth that at all. At all. The other reason why, a lot of Ethon receivers have quality control problems over time. The first Ethon Elite satellite, the first iteration of one, the Ethon X1, what is it? Ethon XM, E1 XM, something like that was called. The display would fade out. There was all sorts of things. Ethon has a quality control issue. And so before I would buy something that's so expensive, you better tell me it's going to perform really well. And at 700, it ain't going to get more stations than a $200 radio. I don't want to put it down or anything, or making a negative comment, but we're not in $800 portables anymore. Not in 2022. The market isn't there. I don't think they're going to sell a lot of those if they do that at that price. What else do we have? Daniel, how do those discounts receive on shortwave? Well, most discounts are made for VHF, UHF. So in general, as you go down in frequency, the performance decreases. There's discounts like the Tram 11 that I've got here, the Tram 1411 that I've got here, which actually goes down all the way to 25. It has a long whip for the lower frequencies. That one probably does it a little better, but in general, a discount is not made for shortwave. Matt says it's interesting because night bands will still have NVIS propagation in the daytime, at least if the signal is being sent that way. Let's go down here. Kimberly, I hope they are secure too. I was seriously thinking about putting up an antenna in an oak tree, but nature took care of that thought. Now we have firewood. Yeah, that is the problem, sometimes. I've got a big maple tree here that's next door neighbor. I tell you, in very high winds, that tree is scary. It is one of those huge, the trunk is like this big. It's like really huge. I don't know what age that tree is, but every single time we get a huge, really powerful thunderstorm in the summer or very strong winds in the winter with ice, I can tell you that tree, I look at it and I'm like, man, I'm scared of that tree. I just hope the wind's not the other way when it actually happens something. And actually, in the past 2 years, the city's cut probably 3 or 4 branches out of it that were kind of not really, you know, it doesn't make you very secure. Let's say that. James Daniels from Northern California, nice to have you here. Dr. Sisop, nice to have you here, my friend. WWV and CHU check. Okay, let's just. I'm just gonna go down and we're gonna do a quick one, and we're gonna go to questions once more because I want to try to answer as many questions that we got from our friend Frederic in France. Yeah, antennas. I personally expect so for safety reasons, you of course put your antennas as secure as possible to make sure that nothing bad can happen. Over 40 years of shortwave listening showed me that at some point one of your antennas will find its way to the ground because of high winds or bad weather, for sure. Charlie McKee, Canada lost Radio Shack a few years ago. Most of the storefronts here, the source, some of my most fun moments came from heading to the Radio Shack, finding parts for rigs and antennas. Look, Radio Shack was my go-to place. I would go with my hard-earned money that my dad would give me for taking out the trash and doing stuff like that. I remember I had $10 a week, which was probably, I think, was higher than pretty much everybody I knew. But my dad had a pretty good salary in 1980s. I had $10 a week, and I think that $10, and I would go to the Radio Shack store and look at the stuff and carefully analyze what I'm going to get. And of course, there was the moments of joy, Christmas, when your uncles are there, and you end up looking at, hey, I've got $85 because they gave you 20 or I'm going to have a very, uh, kind of a fun comment here that I told my family a couple of times, my brother particularly. It's like, it's Christmas and you got 50 bucks. You're on Kohl's and whatever, they give you money. And you're winning because when that uncle that never gives you anything suddenly gets real drunk and says, "Oh, here's a 20." And you're like, "Oh, cool. Uncle got hope." It's like a joke. You look at your family, you look at your brother and your sister, and it's like, I hope Uncle Joey gets drunk tonight because I'm going to get a 20 bucks. I know. But, we're all kind of like that a little bit at the same time. So I remember one, man, the most exciting moment in my life. That's how geeky I am, and we are probably all in electronics and stuff. I remember Christmas past, and one of my friends that lived on the street, we were very geeky. He was 2 years younger, so we were seeing each other for all sorts of things. But he wasn't like the number one choice of friends because 2 years when you're 14 and the other one's 12, it's a bigger difference in how we are than when you're 18 and 20. There's no difference, 2 years. But when you're young, it shows. And so I wasn't hanging out too much with him, but I was hanging out sometimes because he was like an electronics geeky guy, and he loved to go to the electronics surplus store called Addison here, not far from here. So I remember I was 14. I think I was a 14. I meet him on the sidewalk, and I'm heading out to Addison Electronics Surplus Store because I got 140 bucks in my pocket, and I have one thing on my mind. I want to buy my first multimeter. I want to buy my first tester, and measuring resistance and whatever. I want to have my first multimeter. I wanted to to have one. And they were expensive. Today for 25 bucks you get that multimeter that tests a million things. And you're like, "What? 25 bucks?" Back then, there was nothing that measured, a lot of things below 100 bucks. Electronics were expensive in the 80s. So I'm looking, I meet my friend. I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to Addison." He says, "Oh, can I come along?" It's like, "Yeah, sure." And I still remember, I was like, I look at him and said, "Look, I got 140 bucks. I want to go buy that multimeter that they have for 129." And he says, "Oh, that is so cool." So we go there. I buy the multimeter. And now it's just a measuring instrument, but you want to use it. You've got it now. So it's like, okay, I want to use it. He pops up and says, "I've got tons of resistors that I have no idea what are the values." And I'm like, "Oh, this is so cool. Let's, okay, you want to note down the values of your resistors? Let's use the multimeter." We spent an afternoon measuring the resistance of all of his chunk resistance in a little drawer that he had. So it's like, "Oh, this is so cool." And so, fond memories of a 14-year-old kid having fun with his geeky multimeter that probably other people, other kids at 14 years old would buy other stuff with it, but I don't know. It's like, and I got home and I was so happy. I got that multimeter for years, and actually sold it. I sold that multimeter because when I took my electronics courses, my electronics courses were in a private school. 'Cause here in Quebec, schools are free pretty much. So when you go to primary and high school, all you have to buy, most of what you have to buy is books, and there's a little bit of fees here and there for a few things, but it's pretty much free. When you go to college, it's also free. You got to buy books and sometimes equipment. But when I went to electronics, I decided to go to a private college, and a private college cost 4,000 bucks for a year. But you had the equipment. They would give you the equipment. So it's $4,000 to $5,000 for my year of school. But I had a multimeter given by them. I had all the electronics gizmos and parts to test and to do the electronic circuits and so on, the power supply, always given with the course at that place. So when I got a new multimeter at my electronics school, I was working at a place, and one of the boss there, the big boss that was there, where I was working, I was, doing all sorts of lighting systems, and the big boss there says, "Oh man, I wish we had a multimeter to test something here." And I said, "I got a multimeter. If you want it, I'm, $50, it's yours." And it's like, okay, cool. So $50. I had mine, which was brand new. The other one is an old one. And so, anyways, stories of stories. I get lost in stories from all the time. So, cheers. So, anyways, and one of the biggest fond memories I have, Charlie, of Radio Shack was those mystery boxes for $10 with all sorts of parts in them. Ah, man. What else do we have? Yeah, Passport to World Band Radio. Erica Cho found a local magazine shop carried Communications World magazine in the 70s. U.S. Radio Shack was the same as I remember. I got most of my. I lost it. Darn it. I hate it. I need to put something here. Okay. So, I got most of my info from radio magazines back then. Erica Cho later on was ham radio stores. John Doe, you could order out of the Radio Shack catalog. That was great. When they handed that, man, I was sad. Bubba, Seattle says, I still have the last copy of this CFL I bought. I miss the good old days, but love the new technology. So many references and sources online. VA3 JPX Stereotype Scanner Book. Yep. I believe it had Ontario and Quebec in it, right? VA3 JPX, do you remember? I think it was that. It was Ontario and Quebec frequencies. John Doe Radio Shack died when they pushed cell phone sales. Well, when they became too mainstream, that was the death. And they were, I think, Radio Shack, when it was modernized, whoever took decisions did not understand that Radio Shack lived because of us geeks. We don't want to have a cell phone selling company or store. We want to have a geeky store with parts and all sorts of junk that we can go through. Dr. Sisup, Radio Van enemies destroy on 6000. Sounds bad. Yeah, it often sounds bad on 6000. Zen Pharaohs, we had decent books at Radio Shack in the 70s. Not sure about the 80s. I still have shortwave antenna book. Not all the ideas there are really good or safe. Well, that was part of the past also. There's a lot of stuff that were not taught out very much. So there were some science books that were kind of more dangerous than anything else. It's almost like, hey, stick your fingers in the outlet and you're going to see that's electricity for you. God. The Dutchman 996 from Victoria, British Columbia. Nice to have you here. Daniel has a Russian buzzer coming in loud. And what else do we have? John Doe, maple is a strong tree. Oh, yeah, I see that because it's holding up. It's holding up. What else do we have? Keith Habit is hearing the buzzer. Let me try it, just out of curiosity. 4625. 4625. 4625. Any buzzing tonight? The buzzer is actually coming in here too. 4625. Haven't heard it in a while. And I can even see it in the waterfall. If you guys want to try it, it's stronger than usual. 4625. Go check it out, guys. The buzzer is actually received here in Montreal too. 4625 upper sideband. Charlie says WWV still does not seem to do solar geo reports. I actually forgot to check it out. I'm going to have to check it out. Maybe they removed it. K6YYL, hope that maple stays good. I'm sure it is old. I tried to count the rings on an oak stump, but the saw marks made it impossible. I will try to measure the diameter. I'm guessing 80 years. That tree here is probably in that range. It is huge. It's one of the biggest maple trees I've seen. Actually, the first tree I've used when I moved here, first tree I've used for an antenna. I threw I threw a wire in that tree that stayed there for probably the first 10 years. It was my main antenna. It worked great. And then one day we had a big storm, because what I would do is I would tie the wire to the balcony. And one night we had a storm that was really strong, and it was swinging so much that it just snapped the wire. I've never put up a wire. But the funny part is every summer when I'm sitting down, I see the rest of the wire still dangling and moving and with the tree. Mike WX50, nice to have you here from Arkansas. What else do we have? Dutchman996, want to thank you so much. Newbie and shortwave, great community. Your videos, questions, and comments help a lot. Well, that's what we are here for. MDK2 says your drunk uncle was cooler than mine. Yeah. No, I remember that drunk uncle. Every time I was like, oh, I hope he's going to drink tonight. I'm going to get $20. I mean, in 1983, 82-ish, $20 is a lot of money back then. So it's like, whoa, I got $20. I got $20. K6YYL, right after I passed my extra class in 2019, they gave me a multimeter. Oh, man. Crazy. Brad, my first kit was a volt ohm meter from Radio Shack 1972. It was an Archer kit. Still have it and use it. Oh, man. Pretty crazy. Kimberly, what are you drinking? You inspired me to make a margarita. Let's go. This is vodka cranberry. So cheers, Kimberly. Charlie, never touched a mystery box. I had kids, so knew better. I like those mystery boxes. There's so much stuff in there. It's crazy. Like their Sysop Radio Shack made some good radios back in the days until 90s when it became crappy. Yeah, well, things change over time. Skip, there was a Heathkit store in Philadelphia. They got a lot of my money. Hey, the Radio Shack here got a lot of my money. I can tell you that, Skip. Wow. Kimberly, Miss Radio Shack from back in the day. I married a former Radio Shack employee. Didn't know him back when he was working there, but I still think there's pretty funny. We met on the CB though. So, you had that going. You met, a Radio Shack. That's going to make a Netflix story. Here's Kimberly. She loves ham radio. She married an old Radio Shack folk. That would make a great, great story. I would watch that on Netflix, actually, Kimberly. You better sell the rights right now. And I want to have 10% because I gave you the idea. Oh, man. No, Sea Crane does not match Radio Shack in what it is. That's for sure. Kimberly loves the Wall of Fire. It's a great firewall. It's just that it's not the Great Firewall of China. It's the Great Firewall of Montreal. Well, you know what? I wanted to have something displayed there, and I thought, what am I going to display? I don't know what to do. And it's like, let's put the fireplace. Oh, man. Take care, Christian Marcoux. Always nice to have you on board. Always nice to have you here. Aerial imaging. Radio Shack blew it. If they were smart, they would have revamped to be a store for the maker market. Brick and mortar store, full electronics components, servos, 3D print stuff, and I think they could have. I think they could have. It's hard. You know what? They could have reinvented themselves in some way, but at the same time, think about it for a second. Apart from a certain number of younger people that are here, things have changed. How many people were, there's another area I can talk. My dad was in the wool business where, they had all these macrame and all sorts of, you would make your own Fantex slippers and whatever. You would, you'd just buy the wool and knit, whatever, an apron or whatever. It was super popular back then. Like it was super popular for a kid like me to build my own little electronic circuit board with something on it. And the as time went by, look at, I know it's part of maybe, and that's where, okay, let's check out the details of why isn't there more of that today compared to, is it that they were selling less and so less were available and now there's less people doing it? Or is it that, yeah, you would, knit your own, scarf until it was so cheap to buy one that looked great that why should I spend a couple of hours doing my own scarf when I can buy one that looks better for a couple of bucks? And I think electronics and radio hobby and all of that and Radio Shack suffered from you don't build stuff anymore. You just buy it already made because it's cheaper. But at the same time, it's not the same thing. You don't have the knowledge of building the radio. And, I still remember when my dad came home with a little box on my birthday. And I don't know, I was 13 or 14. And he had taken the time to go to Radio Shack. They had an AM radio, a little portable AM radio that you could build. You just had to have a soldering iron and everything and build it yourself. And he brought that home and he said, "Here, there's a little gift for you." And I still remember, I can even smell the solder. I still remember that time. I was on the kitchen table and I was building that little thing, waiting anxiously and being just waiting and thinking, oh man, this is going to be so great when I turn it on and it works and everything. And, the work that goes to it, and then you turn it on and you're listening to an AM station and you're like, wow, this is so cool. What's the value of that today? And people will tell you today that's not needed. No, it is. We still need an electronics tech. We still need somebody that's good with that, because we're not living in a fancy world where everything repairs itself with robots. We still need humans that are able to fix and do things with their hands and their minds. But we live in a world where it doesn't seem that way. We live in a world where it seems like you buy something and you throw it out when it's just doesn't work anymore. What went wrong? Is it the cheap electronics that made it like, why should I spend time doing something? But at the same time, in my time, it was like, no, it's not the question of price. It was not a question of it's the same price to buy it already done. It was like the fun of building it, and you felt so good once you turn it on and you were able to build something that works. And that seems lost today. I don't know if it's just me. I have the impression that today that is something that's totally lost. Kimberly, is that the tree you snuck to put that antenna up in? No, that one I just one day I put a rock on top of, I put a rock at the end, at the tip of the wire, and I just threw it there. And I saw it make like a couple of spins around the branch, and I pulled real good. Is that, okay, that thing is not going to fall from there ever again. The one I stuck was when I put the 100 and some feet wire in the neighbor's yard. And the funny part about it, it was like midnight. My crazy stories from putting up antennas here. It's midnight. I'm in the neighbor's yard and I'm pulling the wire, and there's some resistance. And I'm wondering what the hell's happening. The wire must be stuck somewhere. No, it's Paul the cat. At midnight, he sees that wire in the grass. I see nothing. It's so dark, I don't see a thing. But Paul sees that little wire going through the grass, and he's jumping over it all the time. And it's like, I'm trying to pull, and then I see Paul, and it's like, "Oh, come on, Paul. I'm trying to do things in the dark so nobody will notice." But he's just like seeing that little wire move in the grass, and he's just jumping over it all the time. Matt, $20 went a long way back then. Absolutely. Absolutely. I can tell you that. I had a few of those. And yep, absolutely. Okay. What else do we have? Where is it broadcasting from? The buzzer is apparently near St. Petersburg, Russia. I can hear it. I see it in the display here. It's actually, I see it really well. It's been a long time since I've seen the buzzer so well here on the radio. It's coming in well tonight. Propagation is amazing. Kimberly, does everyone have a drunk uncle? I think we do have all some drunk related family member at some point. Matt, now Kodar is covering up 4625. You see here, Kodar is not a problem here on 4625. My Kodar is more like in the 45 20 to 45 60 range, and then there's another 40 45 60 to 45 80 range. But on the buzzer, there's no Kodar here. So it must be Kodar from the West Coast on that frequency. Interesting. Matt says my uncle didn't get drunk at family gatherings, which was probably good, but he seldom had $20 to spare for on himself. Yeah, yeah. My WK is 50. My drunk uncle just got me to drive him around when I was in high school. Went to a lot of taco joints. Erica Charles Heathcote store in Peabody, Massachusetts, was a good chunk of my money. Yeah, yeah. Oh man. Bobby Vargas forgot to tell you I got you on my new Vizio Smart TV with Chromecast. Cool. Matt says now my great uncle. There was a character and a generous guy, but he lived out of state and saw him rarely. Joe Rotman, nice to have you here, my friend. Domestic 1976. Nice to have you on board. Better late than never, as they say. Skip Airy. Oh yeah, on the Stranger Things. Yes, he was the salesman of of Radio Shack and Stranger Things. What was it? The second season, and it's so funny when Joyce calls him because she wants to plug that. She wants to see the tape from that video recorder, and doesn't fit into the VCR, which was very. You know what? That is very thoughtful because it's very typical of somebody that knows nothing about whatever. She was still good to hook it up to the TV, though. Chris, how are you going to catapult your Aunt Fed up the maple tree? No, but I am thinking of some form of ham radio antenna into it. So there's going to be a catapult of some antenna at some point for sure. Darren Rogers, nice to have you on board from Long Island, New York. Knit your own radio. Oh, man. Knitting your radio. That would be interesting. As long as it's not a tube radio, because I would be scared of fire. But apart from the rest, yeah. MDK2, my wife loves to knit. I'm wearing a sweater and matching scarf. She knitted for me. That's made a comeback. Perhaps some electronics. Yeah, who knows? So that made a comeback. It's more popular than ever now. Huh. My dad worked at a place that was really big here in Montreal. It was actually the place. If you knitted, if you did anything like that, you want to do a carpet, a scarf, whatever. You want to do anything that you'd because I don't have the wording for all of what it's called in English, but I mean, wow, that was the major place in Montreal, and he was working there for like a long time. Jim KW6JF. Okay, let's start again. Jim KW6JFD. In the 70s, as a kid, there was a lot of us into radio. In the 80s, very few. But in the 90s, I don't think I knew one other person who was into it. What I see personally is there was a lot of people in radio in the 80s, a lot of people in scanner radios in the 90s. Not much more after that. They sell pirate FM AM transmitters assembled. Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah. Kimberly says, I was clearly attracted to radio geeks. So, it was perfect because I am a huge geek. Next on Netflix, K6YYL's story of how I met my Radio Shack husband. Actually, that would be more of a on Jill's shortwave show tonight. How Kimberly met her Radio Shack husband and became a ham radio geek. That'd be good. Landy, what is the ATS 100? And does it have a waterfall in it? So the ATS 100 is a different form factor for something that looks like this, which is the ATS 25. So let's just show it here. Here we go. So this is pretty much the same. From what I see, it's pretty much the same. It's just that it's made in this size and it's very thin compared to this thing. But it's pretty much the same thing. It does not have a waterfall. None of these ATS receivers for now, because who knows what's going to happen, have a waterfall. It's really a computer based receiver. And the ATS 100 is a more portable kind of receiver, if you want. Matt, they've made things so disposable. I remember taking my first Walkman to a stereo store to get it fixed, and they told me they didn't do them because they were too cheap. Just buy a new one. Yeah, that a lot of that was going on. You know, there's a market for that because even when I was doing my tech jobs, people would show me devices and say, "Oh, well, you know, that's broken and nobody wants to repair it." But I'd like to have it repaired and not throw it away. And I was like, yeah, I know, but nobody does that. Nobody does that. It's crazy. You know, we lost that side of things. And it's sad because I think that we're throwing away way too much electronics, which is a bad, really bad thing for the environment. Keith Habits is having snow in West Texas tonight. Jim KW6F GFJ says JFD says at night in the 70s as a kid, the big deal was the homemade antenna out of the window listening to distant AM stations from 1,000 miles away. Yep. Yep. Man. Pretty crazy. Let me try to go down here. Let's go down here. Okay. Deal. How many antennas? Yep. Charlie McKee, we need a channel for antenna stories. Actually, we would need a channel for Gilles' stories of his radio life. There'd be a lot of those stories and a lot of things that you guys would laugh your head off. Kimberly, I have a crazy funny story in my early CB days. I would climb up the TV antenna pole to the roof and try to fix the CB antenna. Barefooted. Oh, God. That must be something. I have one that was so funny, and I told it earlier for those that want to hear it. So, you know, my sister was a ham operator, and where she lived, the next door neighbor was a fanatic of satellite TV. So he had a big, you know, at those days the dishes were huge. So it's like really huge dish, and he has to replace it. So I don't know. At that time, I'm at my sister's place. We're all outside, and it's summer. It's like, you know, July, very nice hot summer July day, and we're all in the street because we're all, you know, what guys do. They're changing that dish. We want to see it. You know, we want to see the 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 guys working on a dish and how they do it. So the guy that owns the house, it's so hot. The only thing he's wearing is a little like short pants, but it's early 80s, and he's like wearing those awful 70s very, very short pants that is like, in the 80s we started like having much bigger short pants because it's like, come on, dude, you don't want to see your junk every day at every hour when it's hot. So, but he's still wearing those really tight, short, very short pants. So they're putting up the antenna and he has to hold it. And as he moves, his junk gets out. And so all the street is laughing. We're like, I don't know, 20 guys. We're laughing our head off while he's sending us the F word because we got we're a guy, a bunch of idiots. And he's like, stop the F looking at my junk. And it's not funny. And it's like, but we just can't stop laughing. And of course, the more he puts, emotion in it, the more we laugh our heads off. And it's like, oh man, this is just so funny. And he's holding the dish and he has to hold it. He can't do anything about it. It's like some of the guys are, your junk is hanging. It's like, oh, and you can't do nothing about it. And he's just, the only thing he's doing is like, F you. Some of those memories of good old days. But it was just so funny. Oh man, what a moment. It was one of those things like, oh God, please. Uh, oh man. Yeah, I went West Coast because here there's nothing on the East. The East is because Konar is all across the all across the border near the oceans. So probably that definitely is probably West because here on the East, nothing in there in that frequency range. I'm amazed at how good the buzzer is tonight. Honestly, I'm surprised. Wow, I haven't seen it so good in a long time. Morse code tapping on the pipes and the Burn Man of Alcatraz. Yeah, of course, it's a way of communication. Absolutely. Ah, man. Aerial imaging. I see so much popularity in gadgetry now, though. Drones, yeah, 3D printing. It's not that it's not popular, but it's a different type, and I don't know. Maybe it changed. You know. What else do we have? No buzzer in Vermont, but I don't typically listen for it. I'm surprised you're not hearing it because it's good enough here that I'm surprised. I'm surprised. Charlie McKee, knitting a radio, interesting. Anyone who ties fishing flies will have metal thread. Possibilities of electrocuting yourself are endless. Yeah, I guess. Take care, Keith. Always nice to have you on board. Zen Faros, my wife is a serious knitter. Her dad was a ham and also aerospace engineer, worked for Project Gemini. I'm also sure there is a connection there. Huh. John Brace he used to a slingshot to shoot a fishing line over the top of a 50-foot tree. Yeah, that's a great way to do it, honestly. Matt discovered there's a classic Doctor Who channel on Roku, so I may try to get my wife to make me a scarf like his. Pretty cool. Like 2112, Uno or HD? I like SDR Uno much better. Kimberly, my husband is in a ham. Surprisingly, he did the CB radio thing back in the 80s, but that was it. I'm not unhappy about that. I don't have to share my radios. What is he doing in life? Is he electronics or anything technology? No, he's a salesman or, some kind of like job that has nothing to do with whatever he was doing in the past. Mickey Delmage, I bet the Walkmans only need new belt. Yeah, that was the thing. Very often, a new belt. I still have here that Zenith VCR from '84, which stopped working for a single reason, because that thing is built like a tank. The only thing that needed to be changed was the belt. Once the belt was changed, it still continued working like new. Thank you, 20 log 25 20. Thank you, log 2112. Why is it I have such a hard time? Man, I just have one drink and it's not like I'm getting drunk. I have one drink usually. It's always the same. Oh man. Okay. Maybe I'm tired. Matt, with smart TVs, it's going to get worse because they're super cheap. They make their money from selling the data. I had that Toshiba big screen TV in my living room. It lasted 4 years and started blinking. The lighting display was blinking. And what's happening is that it's a chip in the TV board that overheats. And it's a known problem for a big series of Toshiba TVs. And the funniest thing is, there's a guy on YouTube that says it's really easy for anybody that is, good with electronics to just change it yourself. The chip costs like $3, and what a guy does, he shows you how to change it, and he shows you how to actually put and make yourself a heat sink to put over it so that it never happens again and the TV works for years after that. I mean, you look at that and you're like, okay, how many people are throwing away a good TV while $3 of a chip that's $3 can be changed and it fixes the problem. And you know what? I think part of the problem in there is not just that it's, going to be repaired, is that people look at 4 years later, I can have that TV that does so much more for $700. Well, I'm going to take that, you know? Francis Moore, you're right. Too much stuff disposable to the battery life. I mean, it's crazy. Chris Powell, antenna stories would be like fishing stories. They never go as planned. Yep, pretty much. Kimberly says, I had two different neighbors with those huge satellite dishes. Almost forgot about that. Oh, man, these things were really big. Those things were really big at the time. The junk also, by the way. I still remember because, as a guy, if you want to remember someone's junk, it has to be big. Oh, God. Estela Garcia, nice to have you here. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do because it's surprisingly good. I will make a video of the buzzer. It's a little weaker, though. I hope that it doesn't get too weak as the show goes on. Matt, when my wife and I bought our house 16 years ago, it had a 10-foot satellite dish in the backyard, and we made its removal a condition of the sale. I can't wish we had it now. Bobby, for those who want to explore FTA satellites receiving, do you really need to have a great big dish to start off with? Well, the dishes and the low noise amplifiers that come with them help tremendously. Tremendously. Kimberly, memory shock I received when I was a teen, just sitting outside on a hot summer evening. Um, Evening when the neighbor walked his girlfriend outside and mooned her. I never seen such a hairy ass ever. My hairy story is, that friend that I told you earlier that we would go to the same store. His uncle lived next door to him, and I still remember one day I was 14 or 15. And a very hot day, he came outside without a shirt. It was the first time in my life I had seen such a hairy guy. I mean, I had seen hairy chested guy, but I had not seen guys that had hair so much over. It was like a gorilla, a human gorilla. And I mean, I know it exists, and maybe some watching are like, well, I'm like that. It's like I'm not laughing at it. It's just being impressed by it when it's the first time in your life you see that, because I live in my family was like hairless or almost. It was like crazy. It's like, some people that work hard to remove their hair. It's like in my family we have no problem with that. It ain't a problem. But I still remember I went out, took the trash out, went back in, and I'm going home, and I'm like, I've never seen a hairy guy like that ever in my life. It was so weird. You know, you're young and you just don't know. But it's like, and I remember the next week, I see my friend, and I was like, your uncle is a very hairy guy, eh? And my friend looks at me and says, oh, please don't mention it. It's disgusting. He tells me that exactly like that. It's like, well, I don't find it disgusting, but it's just surprising. Let's put it more in, I'm surprised. Chris G7 G7 VEO. My CB antenna back in the 80s was a 5/8 wave at the top of an apple tree, so I would often be climbing the tree. Hey, I would, and when I was when I had my Realtor Shack DX302, where I lived, we were on the third floor, same thing, top floor. I would climb the ramp and go and fix my antenna. When I would climb that ramp, there was nothing. I mean, the cement backyard was there. It's like if I fell, I was like completely, it would do splat, and if I'm still alive, I'm not going to be the same again. And I would just climb it every day, or not every day, but maybe a dozen times per summer. It's like the winds would like blow the antenna down. And it's like, okay, I'm going to climb and just put it back up. And it's like, young, stupid people. And you know what reminded me of that moment? When I was a tech guy, for a couple of years, I fixed a guy that was paraplegic. So he was in a wheelchair and paralyzed from the neck down. And one day, it's very, very long. It's, you have to reformat and reinstall. So, when that happens, you talk with the person a lot. And at one point, he looks at me, he says, you know how I got paraplegic? I said, no. He says, well, I climbed up my balcony, went over the ramp on the fourth floor where I lived. And while I was showing my friends how funny it was, I slipped and fell down 4 stories to the ground. And I've been paralyzed since then, which was like he was like 12 or 13. And when he said that, the immediate first thing that came to my mind was when I was climbing the ramp to put the antenna back up. And I was like, dang, that could have happened to me back when I was 14. I could have fallen down to, the backyard, and I don't know what would have happened. I could have been killed or whatever. And it makes you think. But when you're a teenager, you don't think about that. You're careless and you do stupid things. It's part of our experience of, learning, I guess. Mike, Zenith was a nice brand back in the day, radios and other electronics. Man, that VCR that I still have, and actually I'm sorry that I can't show you because it's over there, but it's in a way that I can't really show much of it. I still have it. That VCR in '84. I still remember my dad bought it for $1,000, $1,000 for a VCR in '84. Imagine. It was while everybody had the top loaded cassette. That one was the one of the first that had the frontal. You just insert the cassette from the front, not the top where you push down. That thing is a tank, and it still works. Matt, we kept our CRT TV until 2015 when my mother-in-law bought a Sony, which is still working so far. Yeah, I threw out a 27-inch Sony from 1997, a couple of years, 2 years ago. I didn't want to. It was a 27-inch. It was working well. With my old Commodore computer, it was working well. I threw it out for a simple reason. It's too big, and I can't. This takes too much space. Today's TVs are this thin. But I didn't want to. It's like, man, I would have loved to. If I had a big house, I would have kept it for sure. But and I put it outside and with a note and the remote saying it works great. Do you think somebody wants to have a 50 or 60 pound TV in there? No. What I saw is somebody smashed it to get the copper coil that was around the CRT screen, and it's like, yeah, okay, because I mean it was working great. I'm sure somebody somewhere would have been happy with that, but yeah, you know. Kimberly, my husband is a computer software engineer, but we have a ton of hobbies on the side, such as buying and restoring some RVs. And okay, on generators. Okay, so I stayed in the technical side. Where Kimberly lives her husband. Cool, Kimberly. Oh, man. Matt says, if you want to remember someone's junk, it has to be big. Oh, my. Or very unusual. Let's just say that. Bobby Burgess, still got my Spectre 19-inch, but when I moved into the apartments with my uncle, I needed something bigger. So, Kimberly, we used to do dirt bike riding. Okay. Kind of nice. John Beckham, nice to have you here. Better late than never. Absolutely. Kimberly, yeah, this guy was hairy all over. Mooning someone is showing their ass to someone else. Yeah, I know. I realize you might not have known. No, I do know that terminology. We actually, I'll don't. Okay, you guys in the U.S. don't be offended. When I was in college, college kids are always the ones that want to protest about stuff. We went to a bar and had some drinks, which was next to the U.S. Embassy here in Montreal. And all of us together went in front of the U.S. Embassy where the security cameras were, and we mooned the U.S. Embassy and, of course, had the finger. So I know what mooning is all about. Don't worry. I know what it's all about. John Beckham, can you please let me know who broadcasts on 15270 around 0 UTC? Did you hear that tonight or recently? And what language? Do you have a language also? That would help a lot. So let's check it out. EIBI space. I'm just going to check it out there. Because at 0 UTC, Um, I rather slide like this. And it comes slowly. 13, 15 to 70. What language was it? So at 15 to 70 at 0 hours. No, no, no. There's nothing at 0 on 15 to 70 on the list that I have. So I don't know what you were getting. Do you know what language it was? Could be helpful. Matt, Pirate Station on 6909, upper sideband playing music. Chris Barrel, Radio Shack, you had questions, they had batteries and your phone number. Yeah, they would always ask for your full address. You know, it's like, yeah, I want to have your full postal address because you're buying, a pack of AA batteries. Keegan has a Sony CFD 510 CD radio cassette recorder from 94. And my dad, 29JEF, W9JEF, gave it to me in December 2020. John P., trying to get a Texan radio. What website you prefer to ship to Canada? Go to Anonco website, ANONCO. Anonco's website, ANONCO. Really fast shipping and the best place for the price and getting a radio. Hey, Zach, how are you, my friend? And no, I'm not getting snowed that much here, actually, this year. We did have one storm, but it's not too bad. Not too bad. $6080. What language? Zenfaros. That does help a lot when people tell us the language. At this time, 6080. What is it? It's 0230 UTC. And what language is it? Out of curiosity. So 6080 right now would be 0230. 03. There's a Voice of America that starts at 0300. 6080. There's a Portuguese station, which you won't hear usually. So there's National Radio Run from China. If you have a language, I think that would help because there's really not much going on right now. Yeah, Landy, the stands that I have were given to me by somebody that is a fan of the channel that made them. So the one that says official SWL channel is a fan from Australia. And I've got a few that are made of wood. Unfortunately, I think it doesn't make them anymore. It was there for a while selling them, and we haven't had any news from him in a while, unfortunately. But I know that a lot of people would like to have some of these radio stands for sure. For sure. Canadian Radio TV guy, people strip those TVs and neck the CRTs for copper on the yokes all the time. It's kind of a shame to vintage TV collectors who look for old CRTs. Honestly, I was very, very sad to depart from that Sony CRT. I would have loved to find a way to keep them or have them in a home where somebody's going to be happy with them, because it's not just throwing away stuff. But when you're throwing away something that works, it's it's really sad. It's worse for me when something works and you can't throw it away. Come on, it works. It still does something, still does the job that it's meant to be. Me Dalmage, friend and I bought two X front loaded VCRs to make a deal for a better price, around 750 and 86. Sucks. I got a speeding ticket that day to take away my savings. Oh man, so sorry. That's the sad part. Oh man. It's some weird radar life thing. That's interesting. Zach, what place would you love to visit someday? Want to see Norway and or Seattle? Um, I'm a guy that doesn't want to see the standard stuff, meaning it's great and all, and I'm sure Paris is nice with the Eiffel Tower and all of that. I want to see more unusual stuff. But honestly, I'd like to see if I had, if I was millionaire, I'd go all around the world and see everywhere and just go and check out every country. Every country in the world has some really beautiful, beautiful. 15270, John, is not Radio New Zealand. It's 15720, which is Radio Netherlands. Kimberly actually says she actually did grab him off the couch when he passed out from being sick early 2020. Amazing what adrenaline can do. Yeah, I know. I totally understand. I'm taking care of a 235-pound person. I can tell you that helping a 235-pound person get up, or at least putting it in bed or on the couch when it doesn't feel well, is a hell of a tough job, even for a guy like me. Marvin Motts, what? And if the Radio Shack counter person were a cute girl, I would ask her for her address. He was cruising the Radio Shack girls. There were a lot of Radio Shack girls, though, I got to say. Frank Ireland. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that you can use either SDR Sharp or SDR Uno to access online radios besides just using your own radio. Cannot remember which app or how to do it. You have some. So SDR Uno cannot access online radios. SDR Sharp, I'm not sure. There's SDR Console that is capable of that for some of the online receivers that exist, because you can actually put your online radio with SDR Console on the internet and have it accessed from somewhere else. But not SDR, though. That's for sure. Charlie McKee, 10 years, hopped down a 20-foot pine tree to make radio tower for increased reception, which I did, from mom and dad to me instead of the radio. Chopped, not hopped. Stupid keyboard. Timothy, I would want to go to unusual places with warm climates. Climate is not that much of a problem for me. I mean, here in Canada, people are kind of stuck on going south. I hate heat, so that's not where I would go. If I would go south, it's to see the country, not to go to, unless I'm at the beach, not to go to a hot place just because it's hot and has beaches and ocean. That's not me. John Mickham, for a time of years, you know, the um, the Thing is that we are having higher solar activity. It's solar flex 120, 110, 120, 130. So it helps in higher frequencies. And you got to remember one thing is that the signal you're receiving, where is it coming from, and what's the daylight or nighttime path around it? People often forget that, oh, I'm hearing a 16 meter band signal and it's dark where I am. Yeah, but where the signal comes from, it's daytime, and the majority of the path is daytime, which means that it bounces off the ionosphere and comes up to us through a majority of daytime. So that's why higher frequencies might seem weird when it's dark, but in reality, it's normal because signals don't bounce where you are at the top of your head. They bounce off thousands of miles away, where it might still be the ionosphere itself might still be in daylight. So it's not surprising. And February, March, we're getting close to the equinox. Is the time for that type of propagation. And look at gray line propagation. That also gives you a trend of what you're going to listen to and where you're going to listen to these signals. Keegan's got a Sony 13-inch color TV from August 2000. So, Mike Logue, nice to have you here from Kentucky. Radio TV guy, 20-25 Celsius, weather is good enough for me. Not too cool, not too hot. Yep, pretty much here. Here in Montreal in the summer, it gets way too hot, especially when it's like above 30 with humidity. I just can't stand it. So, we're going to continue the next show with more questions, but we're going to go in. Let's check out another question for our friend here. Okay. One last question for shortwave beginners from Frédéric in France. Okay. His question is, I have the impression that when it's cloudy, I get some signals that I don't get when it's sunny. The other day, I heard a signal in the 31 meter band, and it was raining. And 2 days later, I tried again, couldn't hear it, and it was a beautiful sunshine day. Does weather affect shortwave? No, it doesn't. It doesn't much. Weather affects high frequencies in the UHF range. There's all sorts of things in the VHF range, like temperature inversions, and yes, it can. But when you're below 30 megahertz, the HF range, weather has almost no effect. And we've got to be careful because we can sometimes have a impression of the weather is deciding what I'm getting. The weather is making me listen to something depending on it's beautiful or not. When in reality, what is changing is propagation. And what happens is that the propagation that changes day to day, hour to hour because of the sun. And that is a big, big problem because you might draw a pattern of, I heard Vatican radio on a rainy day on 97.05, and today's sunny, I don't hear it. So I guess I'll have to listen when it rains. No, you should actually get to look at the solar indices and the solar activity instead, because that's what's changing that propagation. Something happened with propagation that made it good on one day, bad on the other. Rain has nothing to do with it. It's really propagation, and it's easy to try to make a pattern like that because we we start listening and we're like, oh, look at that, when it's raining, when it's not raining, when it's, but if you listen long enough, you'll notice that there's some beautiful days you'll hear the same signal, and some rainy days where you won't. Um, it's just propagation, and that changes regularly and has nothing to do with weather. Weather doesn't do much on shortwave. I saw somebody the other day saying, "Well, I'm in the middle of a blizzard, so I'm not hearing anything on shortwave." The blizzard doesn't block anything. It blocks satellite signals in the gigahertz range. Yes, that's why satellite dishes sometimes, you have no more reception. It doesn't do anything on shortwave. Weather in general affects higher frequencies, but not in the range of medium, long, or shortwave. John Beckham, thanks for the explanation on propagation, even when it's dark here overhead, but most of the signal is in the daylight under the ionosphere. And that's what you got to check. Honestly, when you get a signal and you're like, well, it's dark, but I'm getting that frequency. How come? And that would be an example is Radio New Zealand in the summer here. It could have been nighttime for 2 hours here, but when you look at the path from New Zealand to Montreal, 80% of it is daylight. So that 15720 or whatever frequency they're using is propagating well because it's daylight all over the place. So that's why you're getting it. And it's something we often forget to think about because the signal isn't bouncing right there. It's bouncing somewhere, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 miles away. Um, Kimberly, if you like the beach, you might like Silver Strand State Beach. I have made some camping videos on my YouTube channel. You might like seeing those. The weather is most always great there. I'm gonna check that out. Well, I do like beach. I mean, I do like beach weather, and when it's hot, going to the beach is cool. But yeah, I'm gonna check that out. I mean, I've been up and down the East Coast and the beaches, Virginia Beach, up to up to Florida. We've been at Daytona Beach. I mean, it's great. These are great places. When you're at the beach, I don't care if it's hot. I have no problem with heat at the beach. It's when there's no water. It's like, no, please. Charlie McKee, kids back in the 1950s, when our first black and white TV came up to live with us, found out we could DX the TV channel with rabbit ears on rainy Saturday mornings, found Rockin' Man episodes. Yeah, because that's a different thing. In a VHF, UHF range, you have temperature inversions, all sorts of things happening. And that is very, very different because there's all sorts of things that can happen there. That's for sure. So, hey guys, I'm a little tired, and we're going to continue on Saturday, I guess. We're going to say good night for tonight, and really want to thank all of you for being here. So the stream held well here with this new setup. No problems with the video, and everything was okay. Because if that's fine, we're going to keep this setup for the next show. And if everything was all right and clear and good, we're going to stay in this setup. This setup doesn't change much, so it's going to be okay for sure. So thanks everybody for being here. Thank you for being great fans. We've been on for what, 2 hours and, well, it says 2013, but we had a 20 minutes, 25 minutes on the other stream before we got here. So the show was on fire like the wall. So thanks everybody for being great fans, being here all the time. It's always fun to be here, and I guess we're going to keep that set up for the next videos and the next live shows to make sure that we keep good 1080p, high HD quality for sure. So I guess the other days was the other PC was having some problems. Thanks everybody. Love you all. Okay, stay safe. Listen to the radio. Have fun with radio. That's the most important thing. Bye bye.